What is going on, homies and homettes? I am Mikey Balzz from Mikey Balzz Fishing on YouTube, and I'm going to do this month's Monster Bass unboxing. But before we get started, see the crazy eyes? Let's burn this thing down. Well, at least I have a second one. So let's get right to it and crack this thing open. We got a blue box for this month. So let's see what we got. First things first, short days, cool nights. So it is fall. That's what you're gonna start seeing. Days are gonna get a little bit shorter as we move into winter. Cools the water temp down. What's kind of interesting is I look at fall a lot like kind of like an inverse spring. Fish get a little bit shallower before they get deep for the winter, because winter's a lot like summer. Something to think about. But a bunch of cool information in here. Every once in a while, they're nice enough to like put me in here too. Let's see if I'm in here. Nope, I am not. Hey, there I am. Hashtag Hollywood, baby. What am I talking about? Oh, bladed weapon, yeah. So like chatterbaits, swim jigs with blades on them, bladed swim jigs, I guess you call them. Very hot topic this time of year. But let's get right into the box. So what do we got first? So we'll do the simple stuff first. We got a little Monster Bass rod sock right here. I like these things. I actually thought they were really lame when they first came out, but I really like these things because they keep your rods from getting tangled up. And I'm one of those guys that has 47 to 1,000 rods on his boat at all times. I gotta have a rod for like every technique. So having those allows me to have all those rods, but they don't get all tangled up. If you haven't tried them, you need to. What else we got in here? Oh, this is actually what I was catching them on before. So this is a jerkbait. This is the Baker Lures. It's kind of like a sexy shad pattern. What's kind of cool with jerkbaits this time of year is that you can fish them for schooling fish. A lot of guys will fish a fluke, you know, something along those lines, a soft plastic jerkbait for those schooling fish. I actually like fishing a harder jerkbait because the fish kind of swipe at your lure a lot this time of year. There's so much bait around. There's so much for them to eat and be interested in that having something that has open hooks like this, if you can, you know, fishing it around grass versus in the grass like you would a fluke. I've actually caught some mondos on this guy, but I'm doing something a little different. I'll throw that in there real quick. A lot of times you're fishing a jerkbait, you know, 1, 2, walking it back and forth. It's darting back and forth. I've actually been reeling these jokers, dude. You kind of throw them around the grass and you burn them for a second and you stop. You burn them and stop. And I think these bass don't see a jerkbait presented in that manner very often. So kind of a cool bait. Next, we have big bite baits. Let's crack these jokers. Ooh, got to rip the bag open. High class. So these are swim baits. They're kind of a classic paddle tail swim bait. So it's a solid body bait with a little kind of paddle tail on the back, little boot tail, if you will. I like to fish these a little bit different. There's really two ways. One, throw it on an Alabama rig, put a little jig head on there, throw it on your umbrella rig. Great way to mimic the big clouds of bait that are around. The other thing that I'll do with these is I'm on Lake Guntersville, a lot of grass. It's gradually dying off. And what these fish do is they get in the last of that grass throughout fall and they get pretty active. They're still chasing bait, but they're doing it in this thick kind of gooey junk grass. So I'll actually put like a pretty thick Texas rig hook on here, an offset shank, maybe a 1/16 ounce weight, and I'll throw it on 50 to 65 pound braid and I'll slang it as far as I can and you burn it over the top. And what actually happens is this tail kind of bubbles like blub, 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 blub. It's almost like a soft plastic buzz bait over the grass. You get reaction strikes. You do miss a lot of fish because they'll blow up on it. But what's cool is you can just throw back to them, or you can pick up that floating frog, fire it back where that one bit and just let it sit there and just walk it ever so slowly right over that hole that they blew up out of, and usually you'll close the deal. So what else we got in here? More soft plastic. Oh, these are kind of cool. X-Zone. What the hell are these called? A hot shot minnow. So this, I'm assuming, I've been catching a lot of fish drop shotting, and these come in a very fancy plastic kind of deal, just like that. And so I've been catching a lot of fish drop shotting, and these seem to be an ultra soft plastic with a little very small kind of like dangle tail to them, just like that. So what I would do with these guys is basically put them on a small circle hook using my, my drop shot, spotted bass, smallmouth bass, even some largemouth, mixing with those bait pods, trying to pick them off in a little deeper water. The other thing you can do with this is put it on a small shaky head, drag it over rock, gravel, things along those lines. It's kind of cool lure. This is a baby bass pattern, I'm thinking. Cucumber, very cute. Very desirous cucumber. I wonder if they have tomato. So what do we got next? Sweet. got some elastic stuff. So this is Z-Man Elastec. Basically, it's a super stretchy, highly durable, but floating plastic, which is kind of cool, and it really makes these baits have a different action. These also come in a little clamshell tray, just like that right there. So let me show you how flexible these things are. Yeah, you see that? They don't rip. They're super durable, which makes them good for swim jigs, chatterbaits like we talked about. Even if you run a trailer on your spinnerbait, this is just a shad style lure. Once again, that boot style plastic. What's a little different with these versus your big bite bait, just like this, quick note, never mix regular plastic and elastic plastic. But the big difference here is this guy is gonna float, so it's actually gonna float your lure up a little bit, make it fall a little bit slower, give you just a different look on that swim jig, chatterbait, spinnerbait, whatever you're using it on. What do we got next? I'm making a huge mess. Oh, well, we got two things you can use your swim baits on. So one thing is this, it's a Mustad, what do they call it? An underspin bass. So this is the bass pattern. An underspin is basically a bladed swim bait hook. And what it does, especially this time of year, is it helps to kind of create some flash and mimic that bait that's all around out there. You can see that blade just kind of dangles down off of there. So what you're gonna do is we'll take this big bass swim bait, for instance. I'm gonna actually bite the tip off. Got to clean that up too. And then you just find your kind of groove for the hook right there, and you're just gonna thread this on just like you would any lead head style like swim bait hook. And you're gonna bring it through and then bring it out of that groove and then just go ahead and thread it up the hook shank. And what you get is a swim bait presentation basically that has a little bit more flash. It helps them mimic the bait. Maybe you have a little dirtier water, something along those lines, but it adds some flash as well as a real cool look when you actually stop reeling that bait and it pendulums down. It gives it some flash, gives it a very cool fall, but perfect for fall and winter. The fish tend to like a little more of a hard bait presentation as we get those colder water temps, and a jig head is an excellent way to do it, especially if you got a blade on it. The other thing we got in here is a original chatterbait. I'm one of those guys, I love the high-end chatterbaits, but I'm a huge fan of your standard original chatterbait. It's a workhorse and it does exactly what you want it to do. If you're not familiar with chatterbaits, basically they're kind of like an all-terrain square bill. They don't get hung on the grass. We'll crack this thing open real quick. They don't get hung on the grass, and even if they do, you can rip them out of the grass and kind of create like a reaction strike. Very classic. You got your keeper right in there, just a classic keeper, but the blade basically goes back and forth, deflecting off of grass, things along those lines. Not as great for wood. Would recommend a spinnerbait if you're gonna be fishing around wood, but it's a great reaction style bait for fishing around grass, even for fishing open water, and it creates this massive vibration that fish usually gravitate towards, especially when you're doing that reaction style retrieve. Reel it, pop it, use your rod tip, kind of rip it a little bit, and almost fish it a lot like a trap. But excellent bait for this time of year because they're chasing bait, which is exactly what this looks like. What else we got in here? Okay. We were talking about shaky heads. We got some Monster Bass shaky heads. These are, tell me they're 1/4 or 3/16? 1/4. Basically, shaky heads that I use are pretty much 1/4 or 3/16, probably 90% of the time. It provides enough weight to get it down to the bottom and keep it on the bottom, but usually I'm throwing this on a spinning rod, so I want it to be a little bit lighter. These guys have a screw lock. So what that does is it's a little different than your standard keeper. Basically, you thread your bait onto there, and then you can Texas rig it, or you can pass the hook on through. Let's try it with one of these guys, with our little drop shot bait. So what you do is you take your little bait, and you use that centering pin, you pop it on there, and just like a screw, you just twist it, twist it, twist it, until it's up that keeper, just like that. And at that point, you kind of straighten it out, you find the center of the bait, and then you bury the hook. Usually I'll do it where I have the hook buried. If I'm fishing more open water situations where there isn't cover to get hung on, what we'll do is we'll actually bring that hook on through the bait because it basically leads to better hookups, and you can just skin hook it just like that. So your hook is just barely exposed, but the tip isn't exposed, so you're still not gonna hang up, but it's a great finesse presentation. What's cool about these guys too is you can see that side is flat. So what that does is it causes the jig to actually stand up on the bottom. Kind of, we talk about that Elastec and the floating stuff, Ned heads, things along those lines. One of the appeals of that is it stands up and sort of just kind of shakes ever so slightly on the bottom. You can get that presentation with a regular standard plastic using these stand-up kind of heads. They make them in football heads. These are Shaky heads. Any kind of jig that has that flat side will stand up on the bottom just like that. What else have we got in here? I think that's about it. We got a golden ticket. What does this do? So if Rick calls your number, you win, you gotta watch live. So this number, I'm not gonna give it to you, dude, because then you'll steal my ticket. But basically, if you watch live with Rick, I believe it's on Thursdays, you grab your ticket and you can score some free prizes, some free baits. And then this one, I really like. He has like epic stickers. Check that joker out. Badass, right? So that's about it for this month's Monster Bass. Oh, we got one more coupon. $40 off Lunker Stick Series rods. I don't know if you guys heard about that, but Monster Bass is making rods now, and I'm gonna get some. So hope you guys enjoyed that. If you got any questions, drop them down in the comments box. Grab yourself a Monster Bass box and get out there and start catching some fall fish.